instance, some of nature's laws, like gravity, can be broken. The mind can actually levitate objects. Now, Billy has learned these things, and on some occasions has used his spiritual force and his knowledge of nature to actually do things like levitation. And he's been known to do that. There are even pictures of him levitating an oven onto a truck when they were moving at some point. And he's demonstrated and explained much of this information to the people around him by doing the simple basic things like bending spoons, heating up coins, and other things, as well as telepathy is a form of nature's laws, understanding how that works. But understanding nature mostly is understanding how the planets and all of nature operate, their cycles, and how we live with it. Imagine if you had the ability to cause a tree to fully grow, say within a year, instead of taking 50 years. Now that would be manipulating nature's laws, wouldn't it? But if you were at the point of development where you understood exactly what it was in nature that caused a tree to grow, why it grew at a certain rate, and why it would take 50 years, there would be a point where you would have the knowledge and understanding perhaps to interface with that and speed it up. You would then be interfering and manipulating or utilizing the laws of nature. Well, generation of hyper-technology. Of course, that would be the area where we just plain understand more and more about the universe, and that's going to come naturally, definitely as we move off the planet. The fifth level of the intellectual life is called the natural exercise of wisdom and knowledge and cognition of spiritual forces. Now, cognition refers to absolute knowledge, when you have knowledge of something. Not the belief. So at this level, we're talking about where we are beginning to learn so much about the spirit that we have cognition, that we have actual knowledge of exactly how spiritual forces work, and people will begin using them in a factual way with predictable results. The sixth level of intellectual life is life in knowing about wisdom, it says, truth and logic. Well, our world isn't run much on wisdom, and most of us don't, run our lives based on wisdom, truth, and logic. But some people do. A small percentage of our society actually does, that they base their life and the control of their life and their growth on logic, truth, and wisdom. There is a time when that becomes more and more important to people, and the material things seem to slowly drift away, where we're less concerned with material pleasures, and we start living our life using wisdom, and the things that we do are based on truth instead of, illogical things. Okay? The seventh level of intellectual life is the primary cognition of reality as an absolute. Now, that's an interesting statement. Primary cognition of the reality as an absolute. That means that there really are truths, that there is definite laws to the universe, and we not only have heard about it, but we've tried it out, and we found out it's true. We're discovering the basic matrix of creation itself, and we get to the point where we actually understand it, start to understand nature's laws, and we start to actually live that way. The Plejadians say this is the present position of just a very few border and spiritual scientists, very small percentage of our population. That's the first three levels or steps of development of human life, and obviously these are all still very material lives. Again, the reason for the material life is the senses. The types of information that the spirit needs to grow then is very basic stuff, primary reasoning, thinking, and working out the intellect. All of this is done through experiencing things with the senses, and then from those experiences, those things which are correct according to creation are added to your spirit and carried forward from lifetime to lifetime. And you make use of them once you find out you actually have a spirit, and you make some use of it. If you don't know you have a spirit and don't make any use of it, like many religions will teach, where you actually think that the whole purpose of life then is just to worship a god of some type, then you're not going to make progress very fast. You're going to actually be living spiritually stagnant lives because there will be practically no progress whatsoever. Because in truth, the only way to spiritually grow is to understand that you are responsible. You are 100% responsible for your own growth, your own evolution within creation. Okay, the fourth level, or the fourth step of development of human life is called the real life. Okay, fourth step, real life. First level is the clear knowledge about reality as an absolute. Now, we mentioned in the last step in intellectual's life here that we're beginning to understand that there were real absolute laws or logic to creation. So in real life, we're going to go through several lifetimes where that becomes very clear, where we really develop a clear understanding that there really is absolute logic to the creation. The second level of real life is the cognition of spiritual knowledge and spiritual wisdom. In other words, we really then have got it locked in. Cognition means that we have the truth about, the facts. That means that we would have the real truth about spiritual knowledge. We not only would know that we have a spirit, we would be past the period where we're experimenting with it, and we would have actual knowledge of how it works. We would be using then the true wisdom of our spirit that's within our spirit to govern our lives. We would be using our spirit then actually to reach out into creation and pull knowledge back for us. It would become a definite part then of how we live. We would be in effect becoming more and more of a spiritual being and less of a material being. Our senses then would start playing a less prominent role in our life. Right now, whenever we approach some situation in life, we use our eyes, our ears, touch, sense, smell, and so forth to quickly make a decision on how to react. We're very material beings, most people on this planet. Most everything is observed as a material being, and decisions are made basically on material senses. Well, over a period of time, we become more sophisticated, and that's what this is saying. We become more sophisticated, we have more knowledge of spirit, and pretty soon we start finding out that the spirit is actually very powerful, and that we can perceive the world using our spiritual abilities, because our spirit now is in fact very intelligent and has connections to higher intelligence. Plus, in order to evolve now, it is necessary to get information that provides experiences at a higher level. The spirit's no longer interested in how to make fire, and it's no longer interested in petty rivalry and fighting and arguing and silly belief structures and so forth. It has lived through those periods. And in order for the spirit to grow now, it needs more sophisticated knowledge. Knowledge that the material senses don't necessarily provide. They still go out and get information for us, but the conclusions that are derived from that information are done more and more with the spirit itself. The spiritual self is making more conclusions. So we're becoming more of a spiritual person and less of a material person. Okay? The third level of real life is the utilization of the spiritual knowledge and spiritual wisdom. Well, this is just an extension of what we were talking about. That now the individual is using his spiritual knowledge. So his abilities of telepathy, the force of his spirit is increasing his lifespan. The force of his spirit now is controlling his health. Might even be controlling more of what you look like, where even through your own spiritual force you could control how your hair is growing. You wouldn't need to sleep as much. The wisdom within your spirit would be so powerful that you wouldn't even ever consider lying or doing things that are illogical. You're becoming a person who does things so much for the right reasons that you're always lucky. Things just naturally go your way all of the time. Okay, the fourth level of real life is called cognition of the reality of creation and her laws. Now, all along here for many lifetimes, we're starting to understand that there is a creation. We're slowly becoming aware that there's some logic to the creation itself. It's not illogical. We know all about our spirit now, and now we have cognition. Our spirit has developed so much that it is tuning in more and more to creation, higher influences, higher life forms, higher sources of information, and we have factual proof, factual knowledge of actually how creation works. Remember earlier in our